Hold on to your seats, because Ashley, the niece of the Braxton clan, has just yanked open the vault on years of family turbulence, and the fallout is hitting hard. Suddenly, ex-husbands are stepping into the spotlight, ready to recount the jaw-dropping, sometimes heart-wrenching scenes they witnessed behind the Braxton doors. According to them, these women are not just living their lives, they're navigating layers of generational trauma that cling to them like a luxury accessory, visible, heavy, and impossible to ignore. And when these men talk about the weight carried by the sisters, they're not exaggerating. It's trauma that runs deep, leaving its mark on everyone who dares to get close. Even Tony's ex, Carrie Lewis, is stepping up to the mic, dishing a full breakdown of how Tony allegedly leveraged her sisters as stepping stones to climb her own career ladder. And honey, he's not holding back. He's spilling the details on why tensions between Tamar and Tawanda have reached the point where being in the same room feels unbearable. Tamar, girl, you had me questioning reality for a minute there, I get it now. It's one of those surviving Tamar moments, the kind that reminds us abuse doesn't have a single gender. Mental, physical, pain doesn't discriminate. Past fights, heated words, even physical scrapes have left marks, and everyone involved carries their own scars. There's even talk of the desperate measures some took to keep themselves afloat, from questionable pills to coping mechanisms that scream survival mode. Sure, every family has its quirks and conflicts, but the Braxtons? They operate on a whole other level of chaos. To truly understand how this sisterly storm escalated into the full-blown drama we see today, we have to trace it all back to the source, the roots of a family legacy fraught with tension, ambition, and deeply ingrained wounds. Evelyn and Michael Braxton, Sr., the parents at the heart of this tangled legacy, set the stage for generational pain long before Ashley spoke her truth. When she finally revealed that one of her Annie's husbands had crossed serious boundaries with her, the family's reaction, both then and now, spoke volumes. Ashley was just 16, a child, and instead of support, the family placed the burden squarely on her young shoulders, treating her like she was the one at fault. The rejection was so intense that she felt forced to leave the country entirely just to find some semblance of safety and distance. When Ashley shared her story publicly on TikTok, did her family rally around her? Not really. By her account, Tamar was the only aunt who reached out. And before anyone jumps to conclusions, Tamar's own distance made sense. She, too, was grappling with trauma that mirrored Ashley's. Still, it highlights a glaring issue. The rest of the aunts offered nothing, no calls, no texts, no DMs, nothing at all. Even Grandma Evelyn, who one would assume would be horrified and protective, stayed silent. The situation surrounding Ashley Braxton takes an even darker and more disturbing turn when you consider her father, Mikey Braxton. Reports indicate that he sent Ashley a cease and desist letter, threatening legal action if she spoke publicly about the abuse she endured. On the surface, such a legal move may appear procedural, but in the context of family trauma, it is far more revealing. It sends a clear message. Silence is expected, and the priority is protecting the family's image over addressing the very real harm done. Rather than providing support or validating Ashley's experiences, Mikey's actions appear calculated to intimidate and suppress her voice. This response underscores a deeply troubling pattern that seems to run through the Braxton family, one in which maintaining appearances outweighs empathy, accountability, or genuine healing. For a young survivor already grappling with feelings of isolation and betrayal, being threatened legally by a parent is not just disappointing, it is profoundly alienating and damaging. Ashley's story, while shocking in its specifics, is unfortunately not an anomaly within the family dynamic. When Tamar Braxton, her aunt, courageously disclosed that she had also been inappropriately touched as a child, the response she received from her sisters was far from supportive. Instead of being met with compassion or concern for her well-being, Tamar encountered skepticism and criticism. The family's immediate preoccupation was not with Tamar's trauma itself, but rather with the perceived breach of protocol, why she chose to make her story public before informing her sisters privately. This response, focusing more on procedure than protection, speaks volumes about the family's priorities and the ways in which systemic patterns of silence and denial have been ingrained over generations. The implications of this dynamic are profound. Survivors of abuse require validation, acknowledgement, and support, especially from those closest to them. When family members prioritize loyalty, image, or control over the survivor's healing, it can exacerbate the psychological and emotional toll of the trauma. In the Braxton family, the response to both Ashley and Tamar illustrates a recurring pattern. The voices of survivors are often dismissed, minimized, or conditioned to take a backseat to maintaining family reputation. This prioritization of appearance over accountability leaves deep emotional scars, perpetuating a cycle in which trauma remains unaddressed and younger family members grow up internalizing patterns of mistrust, shame, and silence. Ultimately, the experiences of Ashley and Tamar illuminate a painful reality about the intersection of fame, family, and abuse. The Braxton story is a stark reminder that trauma within families is rarely addressed in a straightforward way. Instead, it is filtered through complex layers of loyalty, ego, and power dynamics. Without conscious acknowledgement and proactive healing, these patterns of dismissal and suppression risk repeating themselves, perpetuating harm across generations. The silence surrounding abuse, reinforced by threats and skepticism, can be as damaging as the abuse itself, underscoring the urgent need for transparency, accountability, and genuine support within families, no matter how famous or influential they may be. First off, learning about family trauma through social media was a gut punch. Families are supposed to be closer than that, supposed to hear things directly from one another, not from some third-party feed. Speaking personally, there's nothing more disheartening than having someone else retell your own family story back to you. Beyond Tamar, Tracy, and Ashley, it's unclear who else endured similar struggles while growing up. Mama Evelyn may have known more than she let on, yet she shielded the abuser rather than letting Tamar name them publicly. Clearly, many of the sisters' struggles trace back to the dynamics set by Evelyn and Michael Sr. After their divorce, Michael Sr. walked away and remarried, leaving Evelyn to cope until she was hospitalized. In that chaos, Toni had to step into a parental role, even though she was barely out of childhood herself. As Toni's career began to soar, the weight of responsibility only grew. Not only did she have to navigate her own rise in the industry, but she also became responsible for her sisters' careers. Tracy even reminded her, "Toni, when you make it, you can help bring us along." And Toni tried to honor that, but the pressure was immense, so heavy it often left her feeling trapped, unable to fully live her own life. In the competitive music world, Toni was up against legends like Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston. She had a remarkable voice, but by comparison, she wasn't at the absolute top. That's when Tamar became her secret weapon. Tamar's contributions, whether singing backup or serving as Toni's personal assistant, elevated Toni's sound to legendary levels. But as Tamar began seeking her own spotlight, cracks appeared. The sisters' group dynamic crumbled under tension and rivalry, with constant fights undermining their potential. When Tamar started dating Vince, he helped secure a reality show. Tawanda initially thought it would uplift everyone, but Tamar became the breakout star, building a solo career, spin-offs, and eventually her own daytime talk show. Tawanda's ex, Andre, says that's when resentment really took root, creating a lingering tension that made everyone painfully aware of how divided the family had become. Let's set the scene. Every time the Braxton sisters come together, tensions flare like clockwork. Andre claims Tawanda and Trina pinned the failure of their girl group squarely on Tamar, nurturing that bitterness as if it were a full-time job. Tawanda, married to Andre, found herself carrying the financial weight alone for years, while he focused on writing from home, leaving the household responsibilities largely on her shoulders. The stress escalated to the point that Tawanda faced criminal charges for forgery and theft, and even a separate fraud case from her landlord. Tracy, meanwhile, struggled with money too, with public callouts on Instagram highlighting unpaid rent by her and Kevin Sr. Andre acknowledges that Toni and Tamar did occasionally help financially, but it was never warm or nurturing. Tony's diva tendencies and Tamar's unpredictable moods made assistance feel conditional, leaving Tawanda, Tracy, and Trina treated more like subordinates than sisters. According to him, Tony and Tamar often undermined their siblings' confidence, seemingly deriving satisfaction from wielding power over them. Even Evelyn reportedly sided with the more successful sisters, aligning with Tony and Tamar because of their fame and wealth. Meanwhile, Andre, though dedicated to raising their children and pursuing his writing, wasn't contributing financially, leaving Tawanda to manage the household alone. The dynamic paints a picture of a family where talent and success came with a steep cost, fractured trust, unresolved resentment, and a constant struggle for recognition and support. "I don't like some of the things you do." A simple statement, yet it carries generations of baggage. One sister confessed that marrying her husband felt like marrying her mother, someone she had never truly gotten along with. That early family tension, the competitiveness, the bitterness, didn't just shape their childhoods, it seeped into their adult lives, especially their marriages. They could attract partners, but sustaining love long-term proved elusive. Much of this struggle traces back to their mother's own resentment. Tawanda's current partner, for example, seems more invested in the perks than the person. Tony's breakup was messy, complicated further by rumors surrounding Birdman. Trina endured repeated disrespect from Gabe before diving into another troubled relationship with Van. Mariah has been married and divorced 3 times, each union leaving its own scars. Tracy's story is a study in forgiveness. She accepted Kevin's alleged infidelity, even a child born outside their marriage, yet when she passed, she left everything to her son, bypassing Kevin entirely, a decision that still fuels his bitterness. Despite the chaos, cracks, and recurring heartbreak, love is still present. It's messy, imperfect, and sometimes painful, but it's there, threading through the dysfunction and keeping them connected in ways only family can. It's like the drama never ends. Honestly, every man seems to cheat, except maybe President Obama, but even that one's hypothetical. Meanwhile, the Braxton family keeps peeling back layers of dysfunction for all to see. I'm honestly grateful I didn't grow up thinking my parents were flawless, untouchable gods. The Braxtons? Their chaos traces directly back to the parental foundation, and trust me, it's messy. Their issues are rarely black and white. Every perspective holds weight, but at the core of much of their turmoil sits one person, Mama Evelyn. If she were to acknowledge her role, take responsibility, and confront the harm she helped perpetuate, it could open the door for real family healing. Without that, the energy just feels dark, toxic, and heavy. And let's take a moment to honor Tracy Braxton. She quietly made sure her final wishes were airtight, leaving everything to her son while her cheating husband got nothing. She moved in stealth mode, even having a lawyer document her intentions before her health declined, making sure there'd be no room for disputes. That's strategy, foresight, and self-respect all in one. Truly, there's a lot to learn from Tracy's example. So, what do y'all think? Sound off, share your take, and let's keep the conversation going. There's always more to uncover in the Braxton story, and plenty of lessons for anyone navigating family, loyalty, and legacy.